concerns they wouldn't raise any money. Chinese markets have had their best week since the global financial crisis. And Donald Trump announced his plans for a big increase in tariffs on imported goods to the United States. Hello there, very good morning. This is Business Live with me, Emma Crosby. And we start this morning with reports that the Chancellor is planning to soften her plans to abolish non-dom status in her budget next month, amid fears that they wouldn't actually raise any money. Rachel Reeves had hoped to raise around £1 billion a year by ending the perk used by rich foreigners who are residents in the UK but pay their tax based on their permanent address being overseas. Well, joining me now is Leslie McLeod-Miller, founder of Foreign Investors in Britain. Leslie, thank you for joining us this hour. Is this a victory in your eyes?
I'm sorry, good morning. I can hear you.
Oh, I'm glad you're with us. Is this a victory in your eyes, Leslie?
Well, it's not a victory yet, although it is very heartening to hear that Treasury and the Chancellor are listening to the data that we're providing. You know, it was striking that when Rachel Reeves criticised the previous government, she said that they didn't understand the way the world was, that they were in danger of crashing out the UK's international standing, and they were promising to deliver on matters that they could not possibly fund. And that's exactly what potentially is happening here. So that's why we are very heartened that Treasury appears to be listening. We're only now concerned that they may not go far enough to ensure that the non-dom population continue to contribute fairly to the UK economy and to the UK taxpayer.
So the Treasury say that they are committed to reforming what they describe as an unfair tax regime. So what, in your opinion, is an appropriate tax then for the ultra-wealthy in this country? We are
proposing a tiered tax regime, which will increase the net take to revenue and ensure that those with the heaviest shoulders bear the greatest burden.
And why is that any different from just abolishing the so-called loophole for non-doms right now?
Well, it's not a loophole in any case. So the trust structure, which was introduced by the Conservative government, was specifically there to ensure that the inheritance tax element, which is a red line for the non-dom population, did not force people out of the country. So this is a fundamentally different world we live in, and we have produced independent economic analysis from Oxford Economics, which we have shared with Treasury and with HMRC, showing that there is a way of getting the balance right. You know, we all know that the current regime does need to change. It does need to be fairer. But the people who are a part of this regime want to contribute more. Some of these people have been here for generations because they appreciate that the UK has an incredible environment of a fair system for people, a stable economic environment, and they want to contribute to that and do contribute to that. You know, it's striking that this group contribute about £9 billion in tax revenues every year. And those are revenues that go towards social housing, health, the NHS. These are essential parts of the government forward strategy, and we want to partner with the government to be part of that.
Leslie, do you think the UK is becoming hostile for the ultra-wealthy?
Well, that's the message which is being sent out. But of course, what is happening at the same time is that the other jurisdictions, such as Switzerland, Italy, Monaco, are saying, if they don't want you, we do. So bring your investment. You know, the average investment for a non-dom is £120 million, and not to mention the philanthropy as well, which is on average approximately £9 million, and they will.
The problem is, Leslie, though, isn't it? The Treasury hoped to raise about £1 billion, we believe, for closing this so-called loophole to fund breakfast clubs in primary schools. Now, pulling back from that, but at the same time scrapping the winter fuel payment for pensioners is going to be a tough ask, isn't it, for the government? They're going to come up against some real criticism here.
Absolutely, but they shouldn't, because, you know, getting back to the Exchequer's comment about understanding the way the world is. The data that they had for the analysis that would bring them in £1 billion was fundamentally flawed. And we have produced independent evidence that says this is dangerous, it's perilous, and it would be reckless if the government proceeded on the basis of their current understanding. But because we have produced new evidence, they are listening to this. And let's be clear. Rachel Reeves is an economist. She is not going to proceed, we hope, without the right data. And they did not have the right data. Their estimates were grossly misunderstanding the behavioural migration. And we've produced new evidence, and they're listening, and we're heartened by that.
And keep in touch. Let us know how it goes. Leslie McLeod-Miller, founder of Foreign Investors of Britain. Thank you.
I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, Chinese markets have seen their best week since the global financial crisis some 16 years ago. It follows a surprise package of stimulus measures announced by Beijing this week to boost the flagging economy. China's economy is currently on course to miss its official target of around 5% growth this year. That's the chart for you, thanks in part to its property bubble bursting. Well, joining me now is Janet Mui, Head of Market Analysis at RBC Brewin Dolphin. Janet, great to have you on the programme. Pretty drastic measures there from China. Can you explain what's happening for us, to the world's second largest economy, and why this intervention was needed?
Hi, thanks for having me. So you mentioned that the property activity in China has slumped, and that is the biggest problem because it affects confidence for consumers, for businesses, and Chinese governments have actually been drip feeding a number of stimulus measures over the past year to support the housing market. But I think analysts were generally thinking that it is not enough. So recently, there has been a comprehensive package of stimulus, including interest rate cuts, including allowing banks to lend more, reducing the amount of reserve the banks need to hold, direct injection of capital into state banks, and supporting the stock market by encouraging financial institutions to invest, stabilization fund, lowering mortgage rates for households, and even fiscal measures such as directly giving cash handouts to poor households and also supporting unemployed people. So this is really a comprehensive package that I think analysts are finally seeing it as the right steps.
Comprehensive, but some people are saying it's not the bazooka moment that you got back in 2008 with the huge global financial crash and the Chinese government then unleashing a huge amount of money there to revitalise the economy. Do you think this time round it will be enough?
I think generally speaking, it is not enough, but we're in a very different situation now compared to, say, during the financial crisis, because first of all, the problem with China is there is overcapacity, meaning there's just oversupply. The problem with housing market is there's just too many houses that are unoccupied, and there's not enough demand. So if you unleash stimulus to build more houses, railways, infrastructure, that's just too much supply. And China currently has a low inflation or deflation problem. Higher supply will just further exacerbate that problem. So it is difficult to resolve. So I think they're very cautious. And of course, the budget deficit of China currently is about 6%, which is a level that is pretty uncomfortable for the Chinese officials. So I don't think they are planning to unleash like a bazooka approach. But I do think that they're seeing urgency to address the current issue. So that's why they're unveiling the latest measures, hopefully can inject confidence and to support a more sustainable recovery.
Nevertheless, it's been a good week, hasn't it, for the stock markets? China and Hong Kong stocks tracking their best weekly performances in some 16 years. And also on this side of the world, we've seen some very positive moves, some luxury stocks and also big car makers. Just explain the logic behind all these stock market moves.
Well, first of all, I think European stock market, some of the biggest sectors, for example, luxury sector, auto market, basically consumer discretionary is very, very exposed to Chinese consumers. Just to give you an example, for example, luxury stocks, some of the big names like LVMH, Kering, their exposure, their revenue exposure to China is basically in the range of 35 to 45%. And also some of the beverages company, wine and spirits, for example, some of the top names, Remy, Cointreau, Pardon, Ricard, for example, 40% exposure to China. And even consumer staple beverages like Carlsberg, I think 20% exposure to China. So huge exposure. So that's why when you got good news from the Chinese economy that maybe there's better outlook for consumers, then these companies are rallying. And similarly for miners, those listed in the UK Stock Exchange, for example, Rio Tinto, Anglo-American, they're rallying as well because of these Chinese stimulus measures. So it just shows how European stock market is particularly sensitive to anything that happens in China.
Being the world's second biggest economy, it makes sense. A little bit of news that could dampen the good run. Donald Trump announcing plans overnight for a big increase in tariffs on imported goods to the United States, of course, if he becomes president. What impact could that have on trade relations and indeed the Chinese economy?
Well, that will be definitely bad thing for the Chinese economy and for the trade relationship. I mean, it has been negative actually under the Biden administration because they have been restricting export of high-end technology, and they have been slapping tariffs on electric vehicles. But it will just going to escalate a lot if Donald Trump becomes president. And I think some of the tariff measures, proposed 60% tariff on Chinese imports. That's going to be very, very difficult for Chinese exporters. And I don't think markets are actually pricing in that scenario as well. So I do think that the Chinese economy does face significant challenges, not just domestically, but the export market as well. That will be under huge scrutiny.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry to butt in. We have to go, I'm afraid. Janet Mui, the head of market analysis at RBC Brewin Dolphin. Big week on the stock market, and also very big week for the oil market. More than £10 billion wiped off the stock market value of the UK's big oil giants such as BP and Shell. It follows reports that Saudi Arabia is planning to abandon its $100 a barrel target for oil prices. Let's get more now. Kit Haines, global crude lead at Energy Aspects, joins us now. Kit, good to have you on the show. So Saudi Arabia, by far and away the world's largest exporter of crude oil. What do you think is behind their decision to cut output?
Well, firstly, I think some of that reporting recently was probably a little bit misplaced. Saudi Arabia has been very, very open with the way it wants to bring crude back to the market, and it's never really had a price target. It's always really been about keeping the market balanced, keeping it under control, to make sure we don't have that kind of volatility in price, which drives those kind of boom and bust cycles. So I think that's where Saudi Arabia is trying to take the market. It's just in a very, very difficult position right now because the overall feeling out there in the market is hugely bearish. I think, Janet, that you just had on, was just talking about the Chinese economy, and I think that's been a big part of why people are feeling worried about the outlook for the oil market.
It's left some people scratching their heads about why the price of crude or price of oil has been falling, because there's so much geopolitical tension in the world right now, and that usually translates into oil prices moving higher. Why are we not seeing that?
No, it's an excellent question, because I think, normally at this point, if we have outages in Libya, if we have, conflict in the Middle East, if we have hurricanes in the US as well, your oil prices will be flying higher. But I think it's just a case of there's no conviction in the market at the moment about 2025. We're looking forward. Markets are always kind of looking at what's going to happen next. And, given OPEC's expectations that they want to try and bring oil back into the market, I think given the growth plans in some other non-OPEC countries as well, so Brazil, the US, I think the market's just not in a position where it's ready to invest. In addition, you've got US election coming up that could change things quite a lot. And of course, on the 1st of December, we have an OPEC meeting where they will give much clearer guidance on what they're going to do over the course of 2025.
OK, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Kit, joining us, Kit Haines joining us there from Energy Aspects. We're going to just take a break from the business coverage now and give you the very latest news that we're getting out of Nottingham Crown Court, where sentencing is being taken place for two 13-year-old boys for the murder of 19-year-old Sean Sisahai. Now, Sean was stabbed to death with a machete in November last year in a park in Wolverhampton. We have been given the sentencing details. Both boys have been given a sentence of 8 years and 6 months. So that's an 8-year and 6-month sentence for the two 13-year-old boys. Of course, their identity has been kept private because of reporting restrictions. Well, our Midlands correspondent Lisa Dowd is outside Nottingham Crown Court with the very latest for us. Lisa.
Yes, we're just getting the detail from inside court right now. What is happening is that because these boys are children, 12 years old, when they carried out this horrific attack, 13 now, things are happening slightly differently. They are being told their sentence by the judge right now, which is detention at His Majesty's pleasure, which is essentially the juvenile version of a life sentence, but she has set the minimum term that they will serve, and that will be 8 years and 6 months. And I'm just getting some reaction from those boys in court. One of them was nodding, the other one was biting his lip and wiping his eyes, and the boy who was nodding had his hands around his face as the judge told them what is going to happen to them. Now, she began her sentencing by saying that Sean Sisahai was a young man with his future ahead of him. She said that the boys were of different people with very different family backgrounds, and that Sean had had everything to live for, and what they did was both horrific and shocking. She told these children, "I am sure you intended to kill him. He did not deserve to be attacked, did not deserve to die. What you did has changed your lives forever." Now, she's also said that the first defendant wishes that things had gone differently. The second defendant feels remorse for what happened and feels sorry for Sean's family. Now, what will happen in court, because things are working differently because of the boys' ages, is they will be taken out of the court, and then the judge will come back a little later this morning to deliver her sentencing remarks on camera. All the way through, court has been as comfortable as it could possibly be for these children. They haven't sat in the dock, they've been sitting in the main court and listening to what the judges had to say, with a family member next to them and an intermediary to explain what is happening. And the judge and the barristers haven't worn wigs or gowns, and then they have been sitting for only 40-minute sessions so that the boys can try to keep their concentration. Now, some more detail from court. One of the boys has hugged his mum as he was taken away, and both have now left the court.
Lisa, this case making history for all the wrong reasons, because these two 13-year-old boys are now the UK's youngest knife murderers.
And for that reason, the judge has decided that we are not allowed to name them. They were 12 years old when this attack, unprovoked and without motive, happened in Wolverhampton in November last year. Sean Sisahai, the victim, was 19 years old. He was with a friend in a park in Wolverhampton when there was a confrontation at a bench at some playing fields, and it's been described as a confrontation in court, and apparently Sean had done nothing to provoke it, according to the prosecution. Now, Sean and his friends, we heard in court, ran for their life, but Sean tripped and fell and was set upon by these two 12-year-olds. The attack was horrific. It involved a machete, 42.5 centimetres long. It was plunged through his heart, a wound so deep that the machete nearly came through his whole body. He suffered a blow to the head, it chipped his skull, and he had slash wounds on the back of his legs. Now, it was an unprovoked attack. There was no motive found for that attack. And we know that the boys didn't get help. They simply went home. One of the boys was picked up by his gran. He'd concealed the machete, he took it out at home, he cleaned it with bleach, and he hid it under his bed. And we heard in the hours after Sean's attack that the boys played video games and later searched for news articles on the attack. And also the boys' families were in court to hear their sentence today, but the family of Sean Ceasahigh joined via video link from Anguilla in the Caribbean. That is where they are originally from, to hear the sentence, a minimum sentence of 8 years and 6 months for the boys, the children who killed their son.
And Lisa, we will be returning to Nottingham Crown Court, where Mrs. Justice Tipples will be giving remarks shortly. For now, thank you very much. And of course, before today's sentencing, our correspondent Becky Cottrell spoke to Sean Ceasahigh's parents. This is what they had to say.
Sean Ceasahigh was just 19 years old when he was savagely murdered. He'd left his home and family in the Caribbean to come to the UK for surgery to save his sight. Instead, he was killed by 2 children armed with a machete. I spoke to his parents on the beach where Sean learned to swim.
When we cremate him, I told my husband, okay, we will bring him his ash right here and just lose it. You know, I know he will love that because he loved this beach. In time to come, he would have married, have kids, we would have get grandchildren, enjoy our grandkids, and nothing like that anymore. And you know, watch him marry that day, make us feel so happy, but none of that.
Police statement. Let's listen in.
His family are understandably heartbroken and mourning their beloved son, and our thoughts and sympathies will remain with them. Today's sentence can never make up for Sean's life being taken, but we hope it can bring some comfort to all those who loved him. Sean was only 19 when his life was taken at the hands of 2 boys, then aged just 12, who had armed themselves with a machete. That reality has had a huge impact on us all. It is both shocking and saddening. The impact of knife crime is devastating, no matter where you live in the country. This is an issue that affects us all. Much work has been done and we have had successes in some areas. However, this is clearly not enough. We are listening to families affected by knife crime and acting on their feedback to see what more we can do with partners to stop the devastation caused by knife crime. Our responsibility is to work together with partners to understand why children and young people think it is okay to carry weapons and take further action to stop this extremely dangerous behaviour. Our work will not stop, and any death or injury as a result of knife crime will never be acceptable. Thank you.
Chief Superintendent Kim Madrill there of West Midlands Police giving us her reaction outside Nottingham Crown Court to the sentencing of 2 13-year-old boys who have been given life with minimum terms of 8 years and 6 months for the murder of 19-year-old Sean Ceasahigh, who was stabbed to death in a park in Wolverhampton last year. The 2 teens, who were 12 years old at the time, are now making history by becoming the UK's youngest knife murderers. Well, we will be turning back to Nottingham Crown Court to hear the remarks from Mrs. Justice Tipples in a short while and getting more reaction from Lisa Dowd, our reporter on the ground there. But for now, we'll return to our business coverage. Well, back here on Business Live, joining me now is Lucinda Guthrie. She is Head of Merger Market at ION Analytics. Lucinda, thank you very much for bearing with us there as we just move into different areas of news. But going back to business now and the trading week, it's been quite a week, hasn't it? What do you make of what's been going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing I'm most excited about this morning is this 4th bid for Rightmove from REA, which is absolutely, we're getting back to those really exciting takeover days that we haven't seen for a few years. With this Rightmove offer at the moment, it's been increased almost 11%, which is from the initial sort of starting anchor offer. And what makes me feel that we're getting to a really interesting point here is that traditionally, when you have this sort of hostile offers coming in, the board tends to cave when they get increased by about 13.5%. So I feel like we're getting to a stage where the board's got to really look at this, and we've got a deadline coming up on Monday for REA either to make their bid or go away. So it's so exciting. So there's a lot going on in the market, and for me, that's the real situation I'm most excited about.
Could this spark other merger and acquisition activity, do you think?
In the market so far this year is that the UK has actually, in terms of sort of large cap M&A listed and for listed companies in particular, we've seen a bit of a resurgence. We've actually had the busiest 9 months in terms of deal announcements since 2007. Just to give you an idea, just in that kind of large listed space, we've had 25 UK large cap M&A announcements so far this year. Last year, for the full year, we had 23 valued at around £17 billion. And this year already we're at £45 billion. And it just shows you that there's this interest in larger transactions, especially the listed larger listed M&A. And I think given that we're in, so far people have sort of digested where interest rates are, feeling a bit more confident in the market, there's a lot going on. And I do think there'll be further activity to come, especially if rates come down further after the budget next month.
OK, Lucinda, thank you so much. Lucinda Guthrie there, Executive Editor of Ion Analytics. Well, that is it from me. I'll be back this afternoon with the business edition at 4:30. All your business news and the markets wrapping up then. In the meantime, though, at 12 o'clock coming up, Matt Barbette has got all your lunchtime news, including reaction to the very latest news coming out of Nottingham Crown Court, where 2 13-year-old boys have been sentenced to life for the murder of Sean Sahai. More for you at the top of the hour.